Go for it.
Okay, there we
Got
go. Good. Okay. Was someone saying something? So then we went to the gut microbiota is after. So intestinal permeability, which is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything to say about intestinal permeability off the top of their head?
I put in there about the potentially letting in injurious macromolecules.
LPS.
Yeah, the LPS. The mucosa is directly exposed to external environment, so it's taxed with antigenic loads, bacteria, viruses, dietary antigens, and even gluten can affect the intestinal permeability.
Okay.
And make damages to those tight junctions.
So that's what I was just going to say. So since this is AFMCP, I guess we'll keep it really basic because we could go into the whole mechanism of that with zonulin, occludin, and all that, but we'll wait until the gut APM. Everybody agree on that?
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, so on to gut microbiota. And this is where I had to take some notes with the whole immune modulation with the NALT and the BALT and the GALT. You know, with the BALT is the bronchial associated, the NALT, I guess, is all of the salivary glands, lymph nodes, tonsils, adenoids. So obviously, if people are having their adenoids taken out at an early age, that is how eventually is affecting. GALT, of course, is what we're really kind of getting to here with Peyer's patches. So they showed that it was the first time I saw that YouTube video. Were y'all able to look at that on that slide, that YouTube video that showed a depiction of basically what happens in the gut with Peyer's patches and everything?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. I didn't look at that the first time around. So if you haven't, it's a good idea to do that. Okay. So Peyer's patches, who wants to elaborate? Because from my understanding, they are like sort of a little encapsulated on the mucosal surface in between the villi, and they actually secrete, is this what remind me if I'm wrong, they secrete a substance to the lumen. Is that right? Or am I not? Is that something else I'm thinking of?
I think you're correct. I have to go back to that one. I did that.
So, and if I'm recalling my histology from decades ago, they're like a super nidus, the uber lymph node that is associated with the gut, where you'll find a whole conglomeration of various immune system cells.
Okay.
And think of them as the outposts where all your little immune soldiers hang out to guard the gut.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking. What slide are you on?
I was looking on the document, but there's nothing more specific than the general description.
What slide? Oh yeah, oh, here we are, microbiota. I'm just sorry, I'm scrolling through my slides here. If anybody wants to move forward, I'm just looking. Let me see, dysbiosis.
No, that's good.
Digestion, absorption. Oh, here we are, the GALT. I should have been doing this the whole time. I'm sorry, guys. So Peyer's, but yeah, that's where we are. And, you know, the whole idea of friend or foe. So the dendritic cell is the big player here. You know, is it recognizing anything and it's presenting it to the Treg or CD4 cell to see what happens after that. And then, of course, if it's a friend, IL-10 and interferon gamma get secreted because they're not inflammatory. And then if it's foe, then the T cell, B cell with cytokine production are going to be such as gluten. That was the example used. It causes the disruption of the epithelial cell lining.
Did you find it?
Oh,
did you find it?
I do. I have that video up, and I'm trying to find. See, I think I learned it from the video, and because now it goes on to the inflammasome and inflammaging. but, so I guess something, sorry, I'm looking at my stuff too. Anyway, okay. Anybody have anything else to say about that? And then the inflammaging is the overexpression of inflammation genes, immune response genes, and genes associated with the lysosomal system. Just
I think
heavy.
the key point was the repetitive exposure that occurs over years and years and years. I think you said the word years at least 50 times, O'Brien, in the lecture, especially when it talks about inflammaging and like development of like Parkinson's. He was, and how I think the mechanism that he was describing was how the alpha nuclein travels up the dendritic cells into the neurons, into the spinal cord, and up the vagus nerve, spinal cord, and finally into the substantia nigra. Do you remember that point?
Yeah, I think that was when they got to the end for the nervous system. Yeah, they were talking a lot about the vagus nerve, and how its role can be separate from, the autonomic nervous system is separate from the central nervous system, and doing all of what you just said. And let's see, I think we're on to the next, let's see, the second objective then is identify the role, and that's what you were talking about, right? Okay, so are we on the third for the stool analysis? Sounds
I think
good.
the recognition from the first part is that there's so many different ways that the whole combination of intestinal permeability, microbiome disruption can lead to the development of chronic disease. And so, and then the second point is about the different facets of chronic disease and how they play out. The second objective. Does that make sense? Yes, exactly. Thanks, TJ. That I thought was a very key slide.
Which one, which exact one did you mean?
This one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep.
Because this one came up several times, and I think this ties up all the details with the different scenarios where the details work.
What slide number is that?
The one right after the objectives. I think it's like slide 6.
Okay. I always write down slides that I want to print out later.
I think it's slide 10. On this one, it looks like slide 10.
10. Okay. No worries. I know it's a couple different times within there.
Yeah.
And then the third one is the use of the stool test, stool analysis. So really, again, I think, like you were saying, Rakesh, the big pattern, no pun intended, was pattern recognition. That you don't just treat a test, you treat, like we've always learned, not to treat the test, but to treat the client or the patient. But we can get a lot from a stool test. One thing you cannot get is intestinal permeability, even though I don't know if I'm speaking just for myself, but a lot of times I have to remind myself that, because I'm like, oh, dysbiosis must mean you have, an impermeable or a permeable gut, but not necessarily.
It'll depend on the severity and the chronicity, I think, of the dysbiosis, and probably also what's creating that dysbiosis, because some pathogens are more aggravating than others, if you will. Like salmonella is probably going to be more, create more leakiness than perhaps a Klebsiella.
What else did I have here?
So what I would suggest with the stool analysis, he kind of mentioned it, but how they broke it down into, so these stool tests are indicative of digestion, absorption. When you look at the elastase, pancreatic enzymes, elastase is a marker for pancreatic enzymes.
The putrefactive short chain fatty acids.
Yep. So the fecal fat testing, short chain fatty acids. So those those would be under that category. And then for inflammation, then you'd be looking at calprotectin, eosinophilic protein X,
And
and
lactoferrin.
secretory IgA.
So basically the stool testing would be, you would line up where on dig in the problem is, and then put the pattern together based on that.
Mhm.
Just of interest, when you're talking about stool testing, I mean, if I'm looking at some of these things, I wouldn't get them in conventional testing in Canada. You know, like the putrefactive SCFAs and things. You might get the calprotectin, and I might get an elastase. But do you have particular ones that you would use, or do you all get this stuff routinely?
Can you repeat that, please? There was a little bit of a disturbance.
Sorry. So I'm just saying that some of the things that they're talking about in the stool test, some of them I would be able to get through the conventional lab up here in Alberta, and some of them I wouldn't. So we'd be sending away specific testing to whatever it's Genova or whatever it's called. So I'm just wondering, do you have more access to this stuff conventionally down in the States, or are we talking about having to do a paid test?
You can get calprotectin, I think, conventionally now because of using it to rule out irritable bowel disease.
Yeah. And I think I can get elastase as well, but I'm not sure I could get any of the other stuff.
Genova actually ships to Canada. They'll ship directly to Canada, your patients up there. So if you want to order through Genova and have it sent directly to the patient, and then it'll go directly back to Genova testing from your patient, and you'll get the results.
But are you asking whether or not you can get it, we can get it conventionally versus having specific testing? Because we basically mostly do specific testing too, at least I do.
Yeah, so no, I mean, I suppose what I was just wondering is, when you were listening to Christy Hughes talking, she was saying, oh, you can do functional medicine in any particular scenario and you don't have to have expensive tests and blah, blah, blah. And then the performance objective is saying, actually, stool analysis is number one. This is what we need to learn. And you're thinking, oh, okay then. So I was just wondering how much is actually available conventionally across the board. As I say, I think an elastase and I think a calprotectin I could probably get, but the putrefactive fatty acids and stuff, I don't think I could get that. Could you, or are we talking about Genova testing?
In my experience, no.
No experience now either.
Yeah, I'm in New York, and the only thing I was able to do was the same thing that you were talking, those two, but not of other things. So we would have to go through Genova to do the, fecal fat and other things. Yeah.
And I use actually Biome FX for microbiome.
Say that again, Terry, please. You're on.
So I use, we don't use a lot of Genova in the office that I work at. We use Biome FX from Microbiome Labs. And we also do GI map. And sorry, my husband's doing construction directly below me, so I'm muting myself because it's super loud.
That's GI maps from doctor's data.
I have to say, just from a clinical Pearl perspective, and I know it's not, it was in Dr. Salt's lecture, but I thought using the low elastase potentially be an indicator of the brush border damage. I thought that was a real clinical Pearl, because you wouldn't know that unless he said it, or I certainly wouldn't have done.
Right. From the feedback loop perspective, I think because the CCK would be altered and therefore that would lead to less secretion of the elastase, right, as well as bile.
Yeah, because it's just not getting that signal.
Does anyone have a good pancreatic enzyme that they like to use or see other than prescription?
Good question.
I mean, I figured that a lot of the digestive enzymes, or some of them, can have them in it, but I know this isn't a pancreatic enzyme, but like, for instance, a lot of times you order the bile salts separately. And so I was just curious as if anybody because my elastase is low, and I'm thinking, well, I probably need to add something, but I don't know what product to add. And I take Pure Encapsulations Digestive Ultra with the betaine in it. And it has a lot, but I'm not sure I'm getting enough. I don't know. I won't know that until I retest.
Is it digestive enzymes or HCl?
It's got both. So they have a digestive, it's Digestive Ultra, and then they have a Digestive Ultra with betaine HCl in it. It's like, I can't remember if I think it's 200 or 300. I have to check, but 2 capsules, I guess it's maybe 250 because 2 capsules is 500 of the HCl.
What I'm asking, Kim, is if you need HCl, you could just try taking some organic apple cider vinegar with, with mother to help your HCl.
Yeah, well,
your
I
protein.
am good. I was good like around 300 of HCl before I got heartburn. So I assume I need some, but I'm wondering about adding pancreatic enzymes in any client that has a low elastase. Because I know there's prescription ones, but I'm looking more at like the nutraceutical.
Well, I think before I'd start prescribing anything, I'd want to have a clearer picture as to why it's low.
Right.
Is it low because they're denuded? Is it low because they're nutrient deficient? Well, one can play off the other. Is it low because they're dysbiotic?
Well, and I don't want to take up too much time. In my particular case, I'm dysbiotic. Well, I was doing better with my dysbiosis, but currently I have SIBO. So I'm assuming that's why.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say we do use a product, but I cannot for the life remember the name of it. So I will find out and just message.
Love you.
It has
you.
it has basically multiple enzymes
Okay.
in it. So
Thanks.
I just
Appreciate
can't
it.
remember.
Okay,
Thanks.
we can move on. Sorry, guys.
I think you mentioned a couple of, it was Creon or Pancreas. Is that just one or?
No, there's a couple. He mentioned 3 or 4, but they were all pharmaceuticals.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
moved to the next lecture from a time perspective.
Yeah, good call.
Good job.
Got a 4-month-old upstairs. So I've got that's my big agenda.
Someone else want to take the reins on this one?
In full confession, I wasn't able to complete this lecture, so I don't think I can add too much from this.
No, but I think the performance objectives 1 and 2 are basically were covered also in Christy Hughes's lecture.
Yeah.
Just the antecedents, prenatal, natal, basically anything before birth, but that also includes your family ancestral issues as well. And then triggers are the things immediately that sort of tip you over the edge. And then the mediators are the things that sort of keep the fire going. So it's like I have continued mold exposure, or I'm continuing to drink alcohol or eat, a sad diet.
And I agree, TJ. I was only able to get to the first lecture, and they revamped or just rediscussed the 5 R's. Like we just talked about, removing all of the culprits and replacing digestive factors, HCl, pancreatic enzymes, bile salt, fiber to support transit. Reinoculating, they talked about how the probiotics are just placeholders, but as you're doing the whole program, eventually the colonization would happen, and then bringing in the prebiotics, careful with yeast and SIBO and things like that, which actually may fuel the fire. They talked about, of course, the normal Bifidobacter, Lactobacillus, and Staph boulardii for the probiotics, and then symbiotics, which that's the Bifidobacteria and the FOSs, and then the Lactobacillus and the inulin, which again have to be careful with the prebiotics in there for certain people. Repairing, he went through a bunch of slides with specific antibiotic and nutraceutical regimens. So I think they were slides like 69 to 70 were the parasites and some of the things in there. And then rebalance, working on the environmental things like scheduling, mindfulness, eating, heart rate variability, vagal stimulation, psychotherapy for some. What I thought was interesting with which I remember now is the whole blastocystis, which is a lot more common, like maybe up to 25 to 30% of people, which again, are they symptomatic or asymptomatic? That's treated with Flagyl, but there's 17 subtypes of blastocystis. And so Dr. Solt was saying, I don't usually get all of those tests. I just treat if they're symptomatic and not, if they're not. But it can increase your LPSs and contribute to depression was the big thing, and how the gut health again is related to mental health. And that's got me to part 2, which I didn't get to.
I mean, my concern with this lecture, and actually my concern with a lot of the lectures here, is that it's so much of an overview, so the repair, so I mean, that was a great summary, Kim, but the repair module, the very first lecture he talked about repair, and yes, he does talk about the pharmaceuticals and the nutraceuticals to sort of deal with dysbiosis, but then it's just like, oh, nutrient important for GI repair, here's glutamine, arginine, vitamin A, and you're thinking, well, hang a sec, what's the actual, how do we do this?
Yeah, I was actually trying to print that exact slide so that I could take notes on it, but I agree with you.
I find that's the really difficult part, because I don't know about everyone else, but I quite like to know the practical side of it, of this is, how we actually structure this and implement it. Because I mean, the thing I got was rebalance is about the de-stressing side of it, because he says at one point, if you don't rebalance, then you can do all of the other 4 steps, but it's just going to come back again, because if you don't actually sort out the underlying problem, then you're screwed. And that's basically what he said. And the first bit was fairly straightforward with your eliminating and trying to replace and then using your probiotics and prebiotics. But the repair bit, I thought that should almost be a lecture in itself. And I'm not even sure in the GI module whether we actually went into that in enough detail from my perspective. Anyway, so some of the stuff that they talked about later with the blastocystis stuff, that was interesting. Let me just see if there's any other.
Juliet, did you get from that, or did anybody, the rebalance portion? I don't do a lot of psychotherapy. I don't know a lot of people that do psychotherapy. I am very interested in that, but of course you can only do so much at once. But as far as, and I think I put this question to our tribe, and TJ, you were trying to answer as well, but we're asking the more experienced people to chime in. With vagal nerve stimulation, limbic retraining, does anybody have resources for that? Because I think what I'm hearing and experiencing and talking to people about, that's a big, like you just said, that's a big part of it, but I don't think they touched much on that in this course, or am I missing something?
Not in this one particularly. I mean, I think in the Mimi, what's her name, Guerreri or whatever, she talks about it a little bit, and I think, is she a cardiometabolic as well, isn't she? I think they did some of it in there. I know that some of the things that I was looking at were things like heart math, where you've got that sort of biofeedback system attached. But so much of it seems to be breath related and yoga and, the real basic stuff that you wouldn't really, should be part of everything. But obviously, yeah, we didn't get actually that much structured. Well, this is exactly how you do it. It just seemed to be, just think about it.
A lot of those are more experiential modalities as opposed to intellectual modalities. I'm trained in somatic experiencing, which is a vagal, for lack of a better way of putting it, retraining modality. But until you have more of an experiential sense of it, you can talk about it all, but it's really hard to just describe what it does. A lot of times I have to have people feel what their negative states are at the same time that I'm helping them resource what a positive state feels like. And then watching their, nervous system energy, in the moment kind of settle down. And so that's just staying aware and being only in touch with your mirror neurons without necessarily falling into your mirror neurons and thinking that's your thing, if that makes sense.
So it seems to me like most things, there's a lot of tools to do vagal stimulation and limbic retraining, but I think where I'm lacking is even the resources to look into what tool might be best for me to learn, or do you know what I'm saying? So
I
maybe.
do. And I have these on my Spotify that I
Mhm.
have not listened to yet, specifically for the purpose of telling people, just go download this on Spotify. There's
Okay.
some vagal retraining if you just Spotify search.
Okay.
But I haven't, I mean, I did that like last week with the same idea in mind to see, well, what are people actually doing? And does it seem like, with my experience, that this is something I can recommend, because it's a simple and cheap.
Well, I've done that with
methodology.
tapping, and I went on the podcast app and I searched vagal stimulation and limbic retraining, and I listened to this whole podcast. I don't remember right off the top of my head who it was, because I started a million of them and then by the end of the whole thing, it was literally called limbic retraining, and didn't get to anything that I needed. So
Yeah, like I said, it's an experiential thing. People will talk a lot around it, but until you find someone who's doing something with you with it, or have you and again, these recordings may have some sort of self-guided ways of doing it, and that might be something you could try.
sure.
So to that, to be clear that these are two different things. Vagal tone and vagal work is one thing, and then limbic retraining is another thing. So under limbic retraining, you can have things like somatic experiencing, neurofeedback, neurobiofeedback. So Peter Levine does a lot of limbic retraining work. Amy Apigian, AIMIE, Apigian. You're gonna have to spell that phonetically. But she has put out a trauma retraining that incorporates a lot of somatic work and limbic retraining. She has a program out as well, one for both patients and I think one for practitioners to be trained.
Thank you. That name's really familiar, and I think I somewhere came across it, so I'll have to look for it again. Thank you.
AJ, can you put that in the group chat? Was that possible? Some of that stuff.
And guys, just so you know, I'm going to be tagging out here soon, and I appreciate y'all.
Are you going to put the recording up on the Google Drive? Is that how you'll do it, Kim?
Yes. So that's weird. What am I going to do? I guess, do you not still have control over it even though I started it?
I don't think so, because I wasn't the one who was recording. I think it'll record on your computer and you would probably save it.
Okay, well, I can stay on while I walk away, and then when you guys are done, I can just make sure it gets put up.
Okay.
Let's cross our fingers, because I'm a lovely IT person myself. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. And next time I can record if that's easier. I'm actually good with the performance objectives so far for all of them for now. How does everybody feel? Are we satisfied with what we've gotten?
So if we're good with the lectures, I just want to do a quick recap. What we decided on is that I'll put out a message in the whole group chat to see if anybody has an objection to moving the GI module review to next position, so that everything then shifts down and we are not in conflict with going over old material for when the new hormone comes out in July and new bioenergetic comes out in August. So that's a homework for me. The other thing we discussed and decided is that we're going to have a group lead for each group. And Kim, you're doing it for this group, where you're going to put into the chat to say, hey, this is how far we got, or we covered. Did anybody not cover it? Then they can listen to our recording, but we are not going to come off schedule, even if we do not cover all the material during our group session. Is that correct?
Yep.
And then also, if you have questions or thoughts, to post it in that document prior to the group meeting. And maybe let's try and do it, if we can, say 24 hours prior to group meeting, so that people have a chance to look at it and digest it a little bit before we all come together. Is that fair? Okay.
Yes.
Anything else?
I have one question on the performance objectives of this last lecture. Number 3, the identify key leverage points to utilize therapeutically with individual patients. What do they mean by that? I didn't answer that one. Maybe I didn't understand the lingo.
I think that was, it's a bit touchy-feely. My understanding was the leverage points was, you know, what was actually going to make somebody be compliant. You know, that, remember the story with the lady with her mother's milk bread or whatever it was, you know, the idea that you actually had these specific things, and if you drill down to why somebody wasn't doing it, then you would be able to.
Oh, okay. I remember when he said that. Yeah. Okay.
It was
Motivational points.
Yeah, it was how to get compliance, essentially. We didn't look at the performance objectives 6 and 7, but that's sort of similar to the last lecture as well. It was just a
Oh, there was a 6 and 7. Sorry. Let me put that back up.
That's the bit I'm complaining about, though, that they just seem to let us go, yeah, here, do
And
it.
I just made an assumption it was like 2 pages was at the most, but no. Okay, go ahead. I don't really know how we could do that, though. I think that's going to be something in a case study rather than
Right.
in an.
Yeah, I think so.
But
We were using Joan in this case, so, you know, but I think that, you know, by using Joan, he went over those points.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything to say.
If anyone
Blank.
gets any kind of knowledge, you know, any sort of, I know I read Jared Mullen's book and I really loved his weed seed feed idea. Weed seed feed, yeah, that was great. I don't know if you read his gut balance revolution, it was really awesome. But that was after the GI module. But if anyone comes across anything about the use of nutraceuticals and things in the repair side of it, I'd love to know, because there's a big gap in my clinical knowledge there.
Well, one of the things could be, you can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but can't you give a person N-butyrate? You can directly give PO short chain fatty acids. And won't those get down to the small intestine pretty much intact?
I think that was one of the things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I can't speak to whether they get down there intact, but yes, you can give PO.
So for this framework, honestly, my current practice is, you know, to try to get people off the things that are causing their, you know, all the things, the dysbiosis, the intestinal permeability, et cetera, the food sensitivities, and then use the testing to replace. And then we use, for the reinoculate and repair, we use microbiome gut restoration program, which is basically a spore-based probiotic, and then a prebiotic, and then a sort of a mucosal repair product. And it's a 90-day program, 30 plus, you know, the probiotic in the first 30. So that's the seed, obviously. And then the feed is the prebiotic, and you start that at 30 days. And then the mucosal product you do from 60 to 90 days. So it makes it very easy to be able to prescribe, because it comes packaged very well and it's easy. And the only time I make changes is if they have food sensitivities that don't allow them to take those specific products, but then we just sub out.
That's Microbiome Labs, right, with Krishnan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that, honestly, that's the easiest way that I've found to sort of hit all of these, except for the rebalance. Obviously, that's a lifestyle that's a different conversation. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
Repeat
thanks.
that real quick, Terry. I just wanted to make a note of that. I'm sorry.
it's Microbiome Labs, and it's the gut restoration program.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it comes with 3 products. Megaspore Biotic is the first product, and then Mega Pre is the second product, the prebiotic, and then Mega Mucosa is the third product. And you can buy them in a package, like in a box, you know, to dispense the whole thing to your patient, or you can sell them separately.
Have you
which is
had good
what we
success with it? Have you had good success with it?
Yeah, honestly, we really have, and it's super easy for people to use. Although I do have people who, who do have, I mean, obviously, if they have a lot of GI issues or microbiome issues or whatever, then, they, some people do, have problems tolerating the
Mhm.
Mega Pre. But other than that, we've really had good people come back, and well, I mean, just getting on a good probiotic and sort of re-inoculating people start to feel a little bit better. So
Wow.
Are you using that for people with large intestine dysbiosis, or have you used it for any small intestinal issues like a SIBO or SIFO kind of stuff?
so no, so that's basically, we aren't using, that's basically just for people. I'm using it basically for people who are who I know have, poor, low diversity, poor commensals, et cetera, who just need GI support. So for some of the dysbiotic stuff, they have other products, or I'm using like if they have H. pylori, I use MegaGuard. They have HU58, which is another probiotic for dysbiosis, et cetera. So the person that I work for, uses a lot of microbiome products for whatever reason. So, but they seem to work pretty well. But I use, like we've been taught, everything starts with the gut. So I definitely, most of my patients get some sort of gut restorative treatment plan, when initially, and then we sort of work out from there. And this is the one I use because it's pretty straightforward and it's easy.
Thanks, Terry. That's great. So I'll have a look at Microbiome Labs then.
And the last one, I mean, like I said, I mean, I will use Biome FX, which is Microbiome Labs, or, Doctor's Data, because they give good stool information about, commensals and butyrate production, or, short chain fatty acids and all of those things. And then, the, enzymes that are lacking. So I get that stool test on many people. Some people I don't, just because they can't afford it. But then based on their symptoms and their timeline and all that stuff, I will just put them on the gut restoration program. But if I do stool testing, then I will use that obviously to inform the 5 Rs. But everybody's getting remove, re-inoculate, and repair pretty much. The replace depends on their stool testing for me, and their symptoms. So I don't know if anybody does anything else or any additional thoughts about that. My husband stopped drilling too.
That's great. I was trying to work out in my head, because the people I have at the moment are sort of long-term patients I inherited, so I haven't really had an opportunity to do a lot of the first off stuff with them. But I was sort of trying to think it through, thinking, well, do you try and do your, elimination or your basic food health stuff first, and then consider your stool analysis if you need to, or whatever, where you've actually tried to do the things that you can do first. But maybe that's totally crazy. I was just trying to do it from a cost perspective, thinking, well, what can we do that we don't actually need to test for?
I know a lot of, the woman who actually is going to come and talk to us about practice management. I think she takes that approach basically. and she's, you know, she does insurance and a bunch of things, but she loves the elimination diet, and because it is very cost effective, et cetera. And I may be a little bit biased. I work in a cash pay system, so and but I came from an insurance based, low income community or, you know, county hospital setting. So I'm very, very cognizant of what people pay. So that's why I say I don't do a lot of I don't do stool testing on everybody, but if I listen to their story and I can tell that they may be somebody who's not gonna be committed to doing the elimination diet, or do you know what I'm saying? If I can, you know, you can just see, or, you know, with experience, I guess you can tell who's going to really be committed and who's and some people obviously fool you, but if I find that they're not, that I don't think they're going to be able to do it, or, you know, and I actually ask, you know, how confident are you that you're going to be able to do what I'm asking you to do? And if they give me, you know, a low number, then I will, then a lot of times I will do like food sensitivity testing versus the elimination diet, just because they know exactly then what they can and cannot eat, and it hopefully limits or what's basically causing a little bit of intestinal permeability, et cetera. So I may sometimes do food sensitivity testing to eliminate the need for the elimination diet, and then don't do the gut testing, because if they have a bunch of food sensitivities, then my assumption is that they have intestinal permeability. I'm going to repair their gut anyway.
So Terry, along those lines, I guess I have a question. If my suspicion is high enough that they've got, you know, some permeability issues, I'm probably not going to be so inclined to get a food sensitivities testing, because they're going to be sensitive to a boatload of things, I would think, because so much is getting through.
Yes.
I would probably take the approach of investing the resources to do as much gut repair as I can. And then after, you know, maybe 3 months of really diligent gut repair, elimination diet, 5R kind of stuff, then I would look at food sensitivities if they're still having issues.
So honestly, you could do it either way. For me, part of the remove for me is removing those things that could be like gluten and dairy and all of those things, which you can get obviously with an elimination diet, a comprehensive elimination diet. But I mean, when I do some of those sensitivities, it's like garlic, you know, it's things that people are eating every day. And I guess from my perspective, I totally agree with you. And I think that that's how a lot of people are doing it. For me, I want to remove as many things that could be contributing to their gut problem up front, so that my restoration program is going to be as successful as possible. But that's just my perspective. I don't know if that's and I mean, like I said, I'm cash based. The people that I see are coming expecting to you know, to get some testing done. And I try to limit it to, you know, 1 or 2 things. The guy that I was working with actually was like, oh, well, you could probably do this. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm, you know, I want to figure out what's going on in the gut first. And then, you know, after we do that, let's figure out if there's something else that needs to be, you know, fixed, because maybe their hormones are, you know, are out of whack because their gut is dysbiotic or whatever. So, so that's we have the way we work is that we have an initial visit that's an hour, and then 5 weeks later, we have them come back. And during those 5 weeks, they do whatever testing, et cetera. Obviously, if anything comes back significant, then we don't wait till that next visit to give them their results. But just so we can put their whole picture together at that 5 week visit. But during that, so we've lost 5 weeks. So that first visit, I'm wanting to do as much as I can to make sure that 90-day gut restoration program, they're seeing some significant benefit. So that's sort of the
Mhm.
that's the sort of the why. But like I said, I think my friend does it exactly the way you're saying.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that we have as an option for folks, if they can physiologically handle it, is if people can do like a 3-day water fast, or electrolyte replacement fast, that 3 days of bowel rest really gives it an opportunity to heal, I think, significantly. And then gently, introduce more safe foods, still keep them no gluten, no dairy, no processed crap, no sugar. And, but do sort of a FODMAP or an elimination diet after a 3-day fast can really give them a jump start too, I think, on being able to tolerate.
TJ, how long would you do that for? So you do the 3 days of the water fast, and then how long would you do the rest of it? Like 4 weeks? Or
I'm sorry, say again, Juliet?
how long would you do the sort of eliminating, it's not a full elimination diet, but the kind of basic elimination diet? How long would you do that for?
I do at least 30 days because you need those antibodies to come down.
Yeah, I've found that. I don't know whether anyone else has found that. I find if I explain to them that the antibodies take their half-life is 3 weeks, so therefore you have to do 4 to 6 weeks, otherwise you're not going to see a difference. A lot of people buy in then because they get, okay, it's not that it's just this random figure.
Yeah, no, always give them a why we're doing it, because I want them to feel empowered to make the choice. It's like, okay, this is why I'm suggesting it. And if you want to do it, fine. And if not, then these are the consequences. So they can pick what they're, what they're willing to do or not do, because we all need a why, we need a purpose.
Yeah, it just I'm sort of just thinking through what everyone's saying, because there's one guy that I sort of inherited who has lots of money. So he comes in every year and he basically wants to do a food sensitivity every single year, and he doesn't really care about it, he just wants to do it. And I sit there thinking, well, you haven't really eliminated stuff. You sort of have. It's kind of, I'm going out for meals because he's this super duper businessman. I'm going out for meals and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And so I'm sort of doing it, but I'm not really. And he's had constipation issues and bowel issues since he was a kid. And it's much better, but it's not perfect by any means. And if you look at his food sensitivities, he is allergic to everything. Rice, bread, potatoes, dairy, you name it, anything that he's been exposed to, he is allergic to, according to the sensitivity test. And that's where I was thinking, well, do you, obviously he's a different story and I don't think I'm ever going to change him, but, the people who, when you're starting off, do you try and get the diet as optimized as possible so that you at least then have something that's manageable? Because if you've got 30 different things that you're sensitive to, nobody's going to do it. I don't know how they would.
So the things you can do, besides the gluten, dairy, processed crap, and sugar, nightshades tend to be highly allergenic. So, I would have them cut nightshades. So that's your tomatoes, potatoes, and even some of the herbs like ashwagandha is a nightshade. Some peppers are not technically a nightshade, but they're a solanaceae, which is kind of related to nightshades. So people can have sensitivities to peppers. I would try and keep it to the leafy greens. And, you could always even do a keto kind of diet. And whenever people are coming in with a chronic constipation, I'm going to be thinking, does he have a SIBO, a methane producing SIBO that's doing that? Or has he developed antibodies to his vinculin so that he's not, his motor complex isn't working? you know, his nerve system is down. I would definitely work on vagal tone, increasing that vagal tone. He may benefit from some craniosacral work to help bring that parasympathetic system more online, because you said he's this high-powered businessman. So he's probably a type A, anxious, anal retentive, gotta be large and in charge kind of persona. You know, some box breathing techniques for him. And, you know, but get him pooping. I would definitely get him pooping. And you could try putting him on a SIBO diet.
Yeah, and see whether that works. Yeah, I'll certainly talk to him. He's coming in soon, so I'll chat to him about it. See what
But
he says.
really, I mean, he's got to fix his diet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like
he's gotta fix his diet.
that you have to start with that. Because you're right. I mean, it's just, he's just on the hamster wheel of dysbiosis, basically,
Yeah.
and inflammation, et cetera, because he's not eating what he should be eating.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so, and how is his sleep? You know, the foundations, how's his sleep? How's his hydration? You know, what is he doing for stress management? Is it, you know, a bottle of gin every night or tequila?
I don't think he's doing that. It might be wine. I'm not sure it's gin or
A
tequila.
couple of bottles of wine, you know, I don't care if it is red, a couple of, you know, too much of it is still going to be toxic.
In someone like that, just Terry, just going back to what you were talking about, your 90-day program, do you think something like that, a scenario like that where you're trying to get him to engage, but he hasn't engaged for the last 5 years, do you think actually giving him a 90-day program would actually be of benefit, or is there someone you think of?
So I'll tell you that sometimes I do labs on people specifically to show them how bad they are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, for example, we all know that most people are probably deficient in vitamin D.
Mhm.
I check vitamin D because I want people, because people don't understand how important vitamin D is. And my colleagues used to say, my previous colleagues, why are you checking that? You know, just give them a supplement. Because in my population, if I just give you a supplement and the supplement costs $10 and you don't have money for rent or food or whatever, guess what you're going to get? You're going to pay your rent, you're going to eat, you know. But as soon as I said, you are deficient in vitamin D, and these are the things it's causing, then they were like, oh, let me get my vitamin D. So a lot of times I will check labs so that I can, you know, show people your lifestyle is killing you, basically. So in your patient, I'm not, you know, it sounds like he doesn't have enough incentive. He doesn't have enough reason to stop doing what he's doing or stop eating what he's eating, et cetera. So you may need to give him some incentive. You telling him that, you know, his gut is the root of his problems. You know, he's probably heard that year after year from you, obviously. But for me, it may be that you need to do some, you said he pays for a bunch of stuff, you know, and you may, for me, I just sit down with these people. I actually printed off all of the, not all of them, but a lot of the IFM handouts. And, you know, that in one of the lectures that it shows the healthy gut and then the leaky gut, I laminated that and I show people, this is the healthy gut and this is what happens. This is what's supposed to happen. I turn it over. This is the leaky gut. This is why I see that you're having, you know, this is the process that I think you're having. And this leads to autoimmunity, you know, blah, 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 you know, all the symptoms that you're having. And then they're, like you said, they buy in once you give them enough information, once you educate them about why you think what you think and why you're doing why you're recommending what you recommend. They're much more willing to do the thing that you're recommending. I don't know that I think it'd probably help him, but I think if he doesn't do the remove part, you know, you're sort of fighting against yourself. But you may have to give him his why. Do you know, find out what his why is. Like, what does he want to live for? Like, why is he, you know, what does he enjoy? What's his goal? You know, is it his grandchildren? Is it retiring and living in Florida? Whatever it is, figure that out and then speak to that. And then maybe do some different testing that shows him how, you know, where he is. so that and say, we have to fix this or you're not going to get to this why.
And speaking of testing, just, and I promise I won't take up any more time after this. I think the testing that my clinic has always done is a SpectraCell micronutrients and things. Is that right? Is there a particular one that you use that is?
We used to do SpectraCell, and I'm not sure why we stopped. I'm not sure why we stopped. I thought that there was some rumor that they were not doing as well during COVID. So I'm not sure. We use Vibrant Health, sorry. And it basically gives you a list of the significantly reactive and then the moderately reactive. And then we honestly just focus on the significantly reactive unless they don't have a lot. The red items, and we say eliminate those for 3 months as part of the gut restoration program. And then you can start adding them in as you would like an elimination diet.
Cool.
But SpectraCell is good. I mean, I'm not sure why we stopped using it. But that my first food sensitivity was through SpectraCell.
Cool. Thanks, ladies. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Rakesh, for hanging in.
Yeah,
and I did get a Zoom account.
All good. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you, so I'm happy to host as well. And TJ and I are still working out the Tuesday night thing. But I'm also happy to, if we decide to stay here, I'm happy to be the backup host.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
So for now, I'm in. It's just, so yeah.
Excellent.
But if there's weekends and stuff that I can't be here for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're taking most of the holidays off, if not all of them. So that's good. So
yeah.
that
Definitely.
and
I think we'll
gymnastic
all
season
need
is
breaks
over.
along the way.
Yeah. Agreed. So, all right. Well,
All right,
thank
thank
you.
you
Thank you all.
all for your time and your expertise. Appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Till next time.
Till
Yep.
next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Blake,
Bye-bye.
thanks,
Bye.
Rakesh.
Bye, TJ. Bye, guys.